Someone close to your soulmate is hiding a dangerous secret. The truth about his wife left. My beloved child. Someone close to your soulmate has been hiding a secret so carefully that even he never questioned the small inconsistencies around him. But that changed when he found something connected to his wife that was never supposed to reach his hands. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even a message meant for him. It was an old envelope tucked behind several documents inside a drawer she rarely opened, and what disturbed him wasn't the handwriting, it was the date. The letter had been written during a period she had always described very differently. Suddenly, a story he had believed for years no longer fit. And when he quietly asked someone close to him about that date, the person's reaction was stranger than the letter itself. There was a long silence, followed by one nervous question. Where did you find that? Your soulmate felt his stomach tighten. Because that person should not have known the letter existed. Don't skip, because what happened next made him realize his wife may not have been the only person keeping something from him. Instead of confronting anyone, your soulmate became unusually quiet. He began noticing details he had ignored before. The conversations that stopped when he entered a room, the way his wife avoided one particular name, and how someone he trusted always seemed eager to explain things before he had even asked. Then came the detail that changed everything. Inside that old envelope was a photograph. Nothing shocking appeared in the picture at first, his wife standing beside several familiar faces, smiling as though it were an ordinary day. But one person had been partially cut from the edge of the photograph. Only a hand and part of a sleeve remained. Your soulmate almost dismissed it until he turned the picture over. Someone had written a name on the back and crossed it out so aggressively that the paper was nearly torn. He recognized the handwriting. And suddenly, an uncomfortable possibility entered his mind. Someone close to him had not merely discovered his wife's secret later. That person may have known the truth from the very beginning. But the deepest shock arrived when he compared the photograph with something his wife had told him years ago. She had claimed she had never met that person before a certain point in their lives. The photograph proved otherwise. They had been in the same place much earlier, and whoever had tried to remove that fourth person from the picture clearly wanted that connection forgotten. Your soulmate didn't confront his wife immediately. Instead, he placed the photograph back exactly where he found it and waited. That evening, something unexpected happened. His wife walked into the room, opened the drawer, and froze. She hadn't seen him touch anything, yet somehow she knew. Her expression changed before she said a word. Then she whispered, "Someone told you, didn't they?" Your soulmate stared at her, realizing she wasn't asking whether he had discovered the secret. She was terrified about who had revealed it. And when he finally mentioned the crossed-out name, she went completely pale and said 5 words that opened an even bigger mystery: "He promised me you'd never know." For several seconds, your soulmate couldn't speak. The word "he" changed everything, because his wife had just confirmed that another person had been actively protecting this secret. He asked her one simple question: "Who promised you?" She looked toward the doorway before answering, almost as if she feared someone might be listening. Then she told him not to ask questions until she could explain everything properly. But that only made him more suspicious. He placed the photograph on the table and pointed to the crossed-out name. Her hands began trembling. She admitted that the photograph had been taken years before the timeline she had given him, but she insisted the reason she lied wasn't what he imagined. Then came the first real revelation. The person whose name had been crossed out had once been extremely close to someone your soulmate still trusted today. And according to his wife, that trusted person had spent years making certain the connection stayed buried. Your soulmate wanted the entire truth immediately, but his wife refused to reveal everything in that room. Instead, she walked to another part of the house and returned carrying a small box he had never seen before. Inside were several old photographs, folded papers, and a key with no label. She reached for one particular document, then suddenly stopped. "Before you read this," she said quietly, "you need to understand that I tried to tell you once." That sentence hit him harder than anything else. When? He couldn't remember any confession. His wife reminded him of a night years earlier when she had started talking about her past, only for someone close to him to unexpectedly arrive. The conversation ended, and afterward that same person privately convinced her that revealing the truth would destroy several lives. Your soulmate remembered the evening. He even remembered thinking the interruption had been strangely timed. Now he wondered whether it had been an interruption at all. Then his wife handed him the document. It contained two familiar names and one name he had never heard before. But what caught his attention was a handwritten note across the bottom. "Keep him away from this until we know what really happened." The handwriting belonged to the same person who had reacted nervously when your soulmate first mentioned the envelope. Suddenly, years of harmless-looking moments began rearranging themselves in his mind. Someone he trusted had known about his wife long before they claimed to know her. Someone had helped control what he learned about her past. And his wife had apparently agreed to remain silent. But why? Your soulmate looked at her and asked the question she had been avoiding: "What exactly were you protecting me from?" She lowered her eyes and gave an answer he never expected. "I wasn't protecting you," she whispered. "I was protecting the person closest to you." Then she pointed toward the unfamiliar name on the document and revealed that your soulmate had actually met that person before, he just knew them by a completely different name. The room suddenly felt smaller. Your soulmate stared at the unfamiliar name, trying to connect it to every face he had known over the years, but nothing made sense. His wife finally reached for the photograph and covered the crossed-out writing with her thumb. "You remember the person who used to come around before we got married?" she asked. Of course he remembered. That person had disappeared from their lives without explanation, and whenever your soulmate asked why, someone close to him always gave the same casual answer. They had moved away and wanted a fresh start. His wife shook her head. That wasn't true. The unfamiliar name on the document belonged to that very person. The name your soulmate remembered had been different because, according to his wife, everyone involved had agreed to keep their real identity out of the story. But one person had pushed harder than anyone else to make sure your soulmate never discovered why. Then she unlocked the small box again and removed a folded page hidden beneath the photographs. It wasn't addressed to her. It was addressed to your soulmate. His name was written clearly across the front, followed by a date from years earlier. He immediately asked why he had never received it. His wife's eyes filled with regret. She admitted that she had never possessed the letter until recently. Someone had kept it from both of them, and only months ago had she discovered where it had been hidden. Stay till the end, because the strangest detail was inside. The writer claimed that your soulmate had been deliberately given a false version of an important event from his past. His wife wasn't responsible for creating that story. She had simply discovered it later and made the terrible decision to remain silent. But there was one sentence she begged him to read twice. If you ever receive this, ask the person you trust most why they were there that night. Your soulmate stopped reading. He already knew exactly who that sentence meant. It was the same person who had questioned where he found the original envelope. The same person who had interrupted his wife years earlier. The same handwriting beneath the document. 3 coincidences had suddenly become a pattern. He reached for his phone, ready to call them, but his wife caught his wrist. "Not yet," she whispered. She explained that confronting this person without knowing the rest could make them deny everything again, because one final piece of proof still existed. The unlabeled key inside the box opened something that had remained untouched for years, something containing the original record of what happened that night. But when your soulmate picked up the key and asked where they needed to go, his wife hesitated. Her next words changed the entire direction of the mystery. "We can't just go there. The person hiding this secret still has access to it, and I think they already know you found the letter." Before your soulmate could ask how anyone could possibly know, his wife showed him her phone. Less than 10 minutes earlier, she had received a message from the person they were both afraid to confront. It contained only one sentence: "Some things were hidden for a reason." There was no mention of the photograph, the letter, or the key, yet the timing was impossible to ignore. Your soulmate felt a cold realization settle over him. Someone close to him wasn't merely guarding an old secret. They were still watching for signs that the truth might surface. His wife finally explained where the key belonged. Years ago, several personal records had been placed inside a private storage box after the mysterious person disappeared from their lives. Your soulmate had been told those belongings were unimportant. But his wife had recently learned that the box contained a notebook written during the exact weeks when everything happened. And inside that notebook was an account of the night everyone had lied to him about. They decided not to announce what they were doing. Yet before leaving, your soulmate noticed something unsettling about the message on his wife's phone. The sender had used a phrase he had heard before: "hidden for a reason." Years earlier, when he had questioned why certain details about his past never made sense, the person closest to him had said almost exactly the same thing. Back then, it sounded protective. Now it sounded rehearsed. Your soulmate asked his wife what really happened between her and that person. She finally admitted there had been a private agreement. Long before their marriage, she had discovered evidence that someone close to your soulmate had lied about where they were on a particular night. She planned to tell him, but that person convinced her the truth would cause unnecessary pain because the situation had already been handled. She believed them. At least, she did until she discovered the hidden letter months ago and realized the story she had been given was incomplete. When they reached the place where the box had been stored, another surprise was waiting. The compartment wasn't locked. Your soulmate tried the key anyway, but the door opened before it even turned. Inside, Several old items remained exactly where his wife remembered them, except the notebook was missing. For a moment neither of them moved. Then your soulmate noticed a fresh envelope resting where the notebook should have been. His name was written across it. Whoever had been there knew he would eventually come looking. He opened the envelope and found a single photograph, newer than all the others, showing the supposedly vanished person standing beside someone your soulmate recognized instantly. The picture had been taken years after he had been told that person disappeared completely from their lives. But the real shock was who stood beside them, the same trusted person now hiding the secret. On the back, someone had written a date and 7 words, "Ask him why he made me disappear." Your soulmate read those 7 words again, and this time his wife didn't try to stop him from reaching for his phone. But before he could make the call, she noticed something in the photograph that changed their next move. The supposedly vanished person was wearing a distinctive watch, the same watch visible in another picture buried inside the small box at home. That older photograph had been taken at a gathering your soulmate himself attended. He remembered the night clearly, yet he had no memory of seeing this person there. His wife studied the background and pointed toward a doorway. Standing partly out of frame was the trusted person they had begun to suspect. Suddenly, it seemed possible that these two had remained connected far longer than anyone admitted. Your soulmate felt betrayed, but another question bothered him even more. If this person had truly been forced out of his life, why had they continued meeting secretly afterward? And why leave a photograph now unless they wanted him to discover something? His wife finally revealed what she had been afraid to say from the beginning. The secret wasn't simply about her past. Years earlier, before she and your soulmate became serious, she had accidentally overheard an argument between those two people. She couldn't understand everything they were discussing, but she remembered one sentence clearly: "He can never know why you changed the story." At the time, she assumed they were talking about something private that had nothing to do with her future husband. Later, after falling in love with him, she began recognizing pieces of the story. Dates matched. Names appeared again. And the person closest to your soulmate became unusually interested in what she remembered. That was when the pressure to stay silent began. Not threats. Not anything dramatic. Something subtler. Constant reminders that telling your soulmate would reopen an old wound and make him distrust everyone around him. She believed silence was protecting him. Now she understood that silence had protected someone else. Then your soulmate's phone rang. The name on the screen made both of them freeze. It was the trusted person from the photographs. He answered without revealing where they were. For several seconds, neither side spoke. Finally, the familiar voice said, "You found the empty box, didn't you?" Your soulmate's expression changed instantly. There was no longer any reason to pretend this was coincidence. He asked where the notebook had gone. The person gave a tired sigh and said something even stranger: "I took it because half of what's written inside is wrong." Your soulmate demanded to know where they were, but the answer never came. Instead, the caller said the notebook contained 2 versions of the same night, and his wife knew more about the second version than she had admitted. Then the call ended. Your soulmate slowly turned toward her. She had gone completely still. And when he asked what the second version meant, she whispered, there's one thing about that night I still haven't told you." His wife lowered her voice and finally explained why that night had frightened her for so many years. She had not merely overheard the argument afterward. She had been nearby when it began. Earlier that evening, she saw the supposedly vanished person arrive carrying a folder and demanding a private conversation with the person your soulmate trusted most. Minutes later, their voices rose behind a closed door. She heard one accusation clearly: "You changed what he was told because you wanted him to choose your version." Then everything went quiet. When the door opened, the visitor was visibly shaken and left without the folder. The trusted person remained behind and later claimed the meeting had never happened. His wife kept silent because she didn't yet understand who your soulmate was in their conversation. Only much later did she realize they had been talking about him. That revelation forced your soulmate to reconsider something he had accepted for years. During that same period, he had received devastating news about someone he cared about and had been told that this person wanted no further contact with him. There had supposedly been a final message, but he had never seen the original, only been told what it said by someone he trusted completely. His wife now believed the missing folder may have contained proof that the message had been misunderstood or deliberately altered. Suddenly, the words written behind the photograph, "Ask him why he made me disappear," carried a completely different meaning. Perhaps nobody had physically disappeared. Perhaps someone had simply been removed from your soulmate's life through carefully controlled information. Don't skip, because his wife then remembered one tiny detail from that night that she had never connected before. When the visitor walked away, they whispered, "One day he'll read it himself." Before your soulmate could process that, another message appeared on his phone. This one came from an unknown number. Attached was a photograph of a handwritten notebook page, the very notebook missing from the storage box. At the top was the date they had been investigating. Beneath it were two separate accounts labeled what he was told and what actually happened. Your soulmate enlarged the image, but part of the second account had been deliberately covered. Only the final sentence remained visible: "She witnessed enough to know I never wanted to leave." His eyes immediately went to his wife. She looked equally stunned and insisted she had never seen that page before. Then a second message arrived from the unknown number: "If you want the uncovered page, stop asking the person who hid the truth. Ask the person who was erased from your life." And beneath those words was something neither of them expected: a current phone number. Your soulmate stared at the number without touching the screen. For years, he had believed this person had chosen to disappear, and now a stranger was inviting him to challenge the memory that had shaped everything afterward. His wife urged him to call, but one detail made him hesitate. The unknown number that sent the notebook photograph was different from the number they had just been given. Someone else was guiding them toward this conversation. Someone who possessed the missing notebook and knew exactly which page mattered. Your soulmate typed a single question to the unknown sender: "Who are you?" The reply came almost immediately. Someone who got tired of watching him control the story. Then another photograph arrived. It showed the notebook lying on a familiar wooden table. His wife recognized the room instantly. She had been there years earlier. And the table belonged to the person your soulmate trusted most. That changed the situation completely. The notebook hadn't simply been removed from storage and hidden somewhere unknown. It had apparently been taken directly back to the person at the center of every contradiction. Yet someone inside that person's circle had photographed it and was quietly helping your soulmate. He finally called the current number for the person who had supposedly vanished. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice answered, older than he remembered but unmistakably familiar. Neither of them spoke at first. Your soulmate finally said the person's old name. A long silence followed. Then came a sentence he had waited years without knowing he needed to hear. I wondered when you'd finally learn I never left because I wanted to. Your soulmate closed his eyes. His wife covered her mouth. The caller explained that they had tried more than once to reach him, but every attempt somehow ended with the same trusted person standing between them. Your soulmate asked the question that had been haunting him since finding the photograph. Why did he want you gone? The answer was not what he expected. The caller said it wasn't hatred, jealousy, or some old personal argument. It was fear that your soulmate would discover an earlier deception and begin questioning everything he had been told afterward. The original folder contained letters, dates, and a written account proving that one important decision in your soulmate's past had been influenced by information that wasn't true. But before the caller could explain exactly what that decision was, their voice changed. Your wife knows which decision I mean, they said quietly. Your soulmate turned toward her. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. Then the caller added one final revelation: she didn't know the truth when she married you. But she discovered it much earlier than she's admitting now. Your soulmate slowly lowered the phone, because the dangerous secret was no longer hiding behind one person. It was beginning to connect the two people he had trusted most. His wife didn't deny it this time. She sat down slowly and admitted that she had discovered part of the truth during the first year of their marriage, not recently as she had claimed. It happened when she found a copy of one of the missing letters mixed among old paperwork. The letter made it clear that the person who supposedly chose to disappear had actually asked for one final meeting with your soulmate. He never received that request. His wife confronted the trusted person privately, expecting a reasonable explanation, but instead heard something that frightened her into silence. If you tell him now, you'll destroy the life he built afterward. She convinced herself that the past should remain buried. But your soulmate immediately understood the painful contradiction. The life they were talking about included her. By keeping quiet, his wife hadn't simply protected him from an old truth. She had protected the version of their marriage that existed because he never knew it. The voice on the phone remained silent until your soulmate finally asked what that missed meeting would have changed. The caller answered carefully. Years ago, your soulmate had made a major emotional decision after believing someone important had deliberately abandoned him. That decision changed whom he trusted, whom he stopped questioning, and eventually how his future unfolded. The missing folder proved the abandonment story had been manufactured from half-truths. But then came another twist. The caller admitted they weren't completely innocent either. After realizing someone had intercepted their attempts to reconnect, they stopped fighting sooner than they should have. They were hurt, exhausted, and convinced your soulmate had rejected them. That's why there are two versions in the notebook, they explained. One person lied. Another person gave up. And everyone afterward lived inside the consequences. Your soulmate finally understood why nobody had wanted him to see the complete record. The truth didn't expose one villain and one victim. It exposed a chain of choices. Then the caller asked whether your soulmate still had the photograph from the envelope. He said yes. Look behind the crossed-out name again, the voice instructed. His wife brought the photograph closer, and under stronger light they noticed something hidden beneath the heavy ink, a second line of writing, almost completely obscured. Your soulmate could make out only a few words, but they were enough to make his wife suddenly stand. The writing referred to a second letter, one addressed directly to her. She insisted she had never received it. The caller went quiet again before saying, "Then he kept that from you too." At that exact moment, another photograph arrived from the unknown sender. This one showed a sealed envelope resting beside the missing notebook. His wife's name was clearly written across the front. Underneath the image came a message: she deserves to know why she was chosen to carry his secret. And suddenly, the mystery wasn't only about why someone had been erased from your soulmate's past. It was about why his wife had been pulled into the deception in the first place. His wife stared at the photograph of that sealed envelope as though it belonged to another lifetime. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It belonged to the person on the phone, the one everyone had claimed disappeared willingly. But the date on the envelope made her expression change. It had been written only weeks after she first met your soulmate. That meant someone knew about her almost from the beginning. She asked the caller what was inside, but they refused to explain it over the phone. "I wrote it because I realized he was doing the same thing again," the caller said. Controlling what people knew so he could control what they chose. Your soulmate felt those words land differently now. The trusted person hadn't merely interfered with one relationship from the past. He may have quietly influenced the circumstances surrounding his future as well. And his wife suddenly remembered something disturbing. Shortly after meeting your soulmate, that trusted person had taken an unusual interest in bringing them closer. She described invitations that had seemed harmless at the time, carefully arranged conversations, and moments when the trusted person repeatedly emphasized how badly your soulmate had been hurt by someone who walked away. His wife had accepted that story as truth. It made her protective of him. It made her reluctant to question the past. And without realizing it, she had entered the relationship already carrying a version of your soulmate's history chosen for her by somebody else. The caller confirmed that this was why the second letter had been written. It wasn't meant to separate them. It was meant to warn her before she became another person unknowingly protecting the same lie. But she never received it. Your soulmate looked at his wife differently, not with anger alone, but with the painful realization that both of them had been given carefully selected pieces of information. Yet there was still one question nobody could answer. Why had the trusted person been so determined to shape your soulmate's decisions in the first place? The answer began arriving seconds later. The unknown sender sent another image from the missing notebook, this time showing an entry written several days before the original confrontation. One sentence had been underlined twice: "He isn't hiding what happened because he fears losing him. He's hiding why he needed that decision made." Your soulmate read it aloud, and the caller immediately became quiet. Then they admitted there was something inside the original folder they had avoided mentioning. A document connected to a promise made years earlier, one that gave the trusted person a powerful personal reason to keep your soulmate emotionally dependent on their version of events. Before the caller could explain further, the unknown sender sent an address and a message: "Come alone if you want both letters and the complete notebook." His wife shook her head immediately. Something about the invitation felt wrong. But your soulmate noticed the address. He knew the place. He had been taken there once as a young man by the very person whose secret they were uncovering, and until that moment, he had completely forgotten what he had seen there. The memory returned in fragments. Your soulmate remembered a narrow hallway, a locked office, and the trusted person telling him to wait outside while an argument unfolded behind the door. At the time, he had been too young to understand why his name kept surfacing inside that room. Now one sentence came rushing back with uncomfortable clarity: "You cannot make that choice for him forever." He told his wife what he remembered, and she immediately connected it to the notebook entry. Maybe the deception had begun much earlier than any of them realized. The address wasn't simply where evidence had been hidden. It was where someone had challenged the trusted person's control years before. Your soulmate refused to walk blindly into another carefully arranged situation, so instead of going alone, he replied to the unknown sender with one demand: photograph the sealed letters beside today's date. Minutes later, the proof arrived. The letters were real. But something else appeared in the corner of the photograph, a framed picture your soulmate recognized from the trusted person's home. That detail exposed the unknown sender's location. Whoever had been secretly helping them was either inside the trusted person's house or had direct access to it. Your soulmate called the number again and asked the person from his past whether anyone else knew about the notebook. After a long hesitation, the caller gave him one name. Your soulmate recognized it immediately. It belonged to someone who had remained quietly close to the trusted person for years, someone who rarely involved themselves in family disagreements and therefore had never attracted suspicion. Suddenly, their silence looked different. The caller explained that this person had witnessed pieces of the original deception but stayed out of it until recently, when they discovered the notebook was about to be permanently removed. That was why the photographs were being sent now. Something huge was waiting for your soulmate, because the secret had reached a breaking point. The person hiding it apparently knew the old story could no longer survive if the original letters were finally read together. Then the unknown sender called instead of texting. A nervous voice confirmed what your soulmate had begun to suspect. "I have the notebook," they said, "but you need to understand why he kept it." According to them, the missing document inside the original folder described a promise made after a painful family crisis years earlier. The trusted person had convinced themselves that protecting your soulmate meant controlling which truths reached him. At first, it may even have come from genuine concern. But over time, protection became manipulation. One altered story required another. One hidden letter required another. Eventually, his wife was drawn into preserving something she had never created. Your soulmate asked the question that mattered most: what was the first lie? The caller took a breath and answered, "It wasn't that someone abandoned you. That came later. The first lie was about why you were separated from them in the first place." Then they revealed that the complete explanation was written on the very first page of the notebook, a page someone had carefully removed years ago. The missing first page changed everything, because your soulmate suddenly remembered seeing a torn sheet among his wife's old papers months earlier. At the time, he assumed it was meaningless, a faded page with only half a sentence visible near the bottom. His wife went completely still when he mentioned it. She knew exactly which paper he meant. Without another word, they returned home and searched the box again until she found it folded beneath an old photograph. The top had been ripped away, but several lines remained readable. One sentence stood out: "He believes the separation was their decision, but it wasn't." Your soulmate felt the meaning settle over him. Someone had apparently decided, long before the later lies began, that two people in his life needed to be kept apart. And the person he trusted most had spent years making that decision look voluntary. His wife then noticed something neither of them had seen before. Along the torn edge were faint impressions from handwriting on the missing upper half. By angling the page beneath the light, they could make out fragments: a date, two initials, and the words "if he learns why." The initials belonged to the trusted person and someone else your soulmate recognized from his childhood. That second person had always been described as merely an old family acquaintance, yet the notebook suggested they had been involved in the original decision. Your soulmate called the person who had been erased from his past and read the fragments aloud. The response came instantly: "That's the meeting I tried to tell you about." According to them, several people had gathered years earlier to decide what information your soulmate should receive during a difficult period. One person argued that he deserved the complete truth. The trusted person disagreed, and afterward, the version your soulmate received was dramatically different. Then the anonymous helper sent one final photograph. It showed the missing upper half of the page. The pieces matched perfectly. Your soulmate enlarged the image and began reading, but his wife suddenly whispered, "Wait." One line mentioned her family name years before she and your soulmate had supposedly met. That should have been impossible. The notebook suggested the trusted person already knew who she was and had considered her part of a future plan long before their first introduction. Your soulmate looked at his wife, and for once she appeared genuinely frightened by the implication. She had believed she was pulled into the secret accidentally after falling in love with him. But the page suggested something far more unsettling. Someone may have known exactly who she was before placing her in your soulmate's path. Then the anonymous helper sent another message containing only 6 words: "Ask her father who introduced them." His wife read the message twice before saying something your soulmate had never heard before: her father had known the trusted person years before she met your soulmate. She had always believed their connection was casual, something formed through mutual acquaintances, but now she remembered an old conversation that suddenly carried a different meaning. Shortly before she first met your soulmate, her father had told her about someone good who had been through a difficult time. She assumed he was simply being protective when he encouraged her to give your soulmate a chance. But what if that introduction hadn't been spontaneous at all? She called her father and asked one direct question: "Who first told you about him?" Silence filled the line. Then her father answered with the exact name they had been investigating. Your soulmate felt his chest tighten. Their meeting had not been an accident. Her father insisted he had never known about hidden letters or altered stories. He said the trusted person approached him years earlier with what sounded like a harmless suggestion: two people with compatible personalities might help each other move forward after difficult experiences. But then he revealed something stranger. Before making the introduction, the trusted person had asked unusually detailed questions about his daughter. Whether she was loyal, whether she avoided conflict, and whether she believed the past should stay in the past. At the time, her father thought those questions reflected concern for your soulmate. Now they sounded like someone searching for a person unlikely to challenge an established story. His wife's face changed as she listened. She finally understood why the trusted person had been so comfortable asking her to remain silent years later. Perhaps they had expected her silence long before she ever knew there was anything to hide. But her father had one more detail. He still possessed an old note from the conversation because he had written down a phone number on the back. He found it while they waited and read the front aloud. It contained a short list of names connected to your soulmate's past, and beside his daughter's name were 3 unsettling words: "She doesn't know." Nobody spoke. Your soulmate asked him to photograph the note immediately. When the image arrived, his wife recognized the handwriting. It matched the writing beneath the photograph, the hidden document, and the notebook annotations. But another name appeared at the bottom of the list, circled twice. It belonged to someone neither your soulmate nor his wife had considered suspicious because that person had supposedly known nothing about their relationship until much later. His wife whispered the name aloud. Her father interrupted instantly, "No. That person was there when your introduction was arranged." And suddenly, they realized the secret had never belonged to one trusted person alone. That second name changed the shape of everything. Your soulmate remembered the person as someone who always appeared neutral, the one who calmed disagreements, defended the trusted person's intentions, and repeatedly told him not to dig up old pain. Now those words sounded less like comfort and more like strategy. His wife's father confirmed that this person had been present during the conversation that eventually led to their introduction. More importantly, they had brought a folder containing information about your soulmate's past. Nobody called it a plan. Nobody openly discussed manipulating anyone. They framed it as helping a wounded person move forward. But her father remembered one uncomfortable moment. When he asked whether your soulmate knew they were discussing his future, the newly revealed person answered, "He doesn't need another choice right now. He needs stability." Your soulmate heard those words and understood something painful. People close to him had been making decisions on his behalf while convincing themselves it was kindness. Then his wife noticed the circled name wasn't the only unusual thing on her father's note. Beside it was a date that matched the day before the supposedly vanished person had made their final attempt to contact your soulmate. That connection was too precise to ignore. They called the person from his past again and asked what happened during those 24 hours. The answer opened another door. They had delivered 2 letters, not one, to someone they believed would pass them directly to your soulmate. One explained that they never intended to abandon him. The second contained proof that the original separation had been arranged by others. Neither letter arrived. But the messenger who accepted them wasn't the trusted person they had been investigating. It was the second name on the list. For years, everyone had focused on the person who controlled the story afterward. Now they had finally identified the person who may have intercepted the evidence before the lie became permanent. Your soulmate called the anonymous helper and asked whether the missing notebook mentioned this second person. Pages turned quietly on the other end. Then the helper stopped. Yes, they whispered. There was an entry written the morning after those letters disappeared. It described an argument between the two people your soulmate had trusted for years. One wanted to return the letters. The other insisted it was already too late because your soulmate had accepted their version of events. Then came the line that made his wife grip the edge of the table. If he ever discovers what we did, tell him it was my decision. Someone had apparently agreed to carry the blame if the truth surfaced. But the notebook didn't identify which person wrote those words. Your soulmate thought back to every clue, every warning, every strangely timed interruption, and suddenly realized they had been awesome.